I never imagined that my biggest enemy would be the woman who raised me. I never thought that the person I called mother would be the one to steal the man I loved. But life is full of cruel surprises. My name is Zuwena, and this is the story of how my stepmother tried to take everything from me. I was only 8 years old when my world shattered. My mother died suddenly, leaving my father and me drowning in grief. For a while, it was just the two of us, bound by sorrow. But my father was not a man who could live alone for long. Within a year, he brought home a woman named Mama Kalima. She was beautiful, too beautiful. Smooth dark skin, striking eyes that seemed to hold too many secrets. When she first arrived, she was sweet to me. She made my favorite meals, hummed songs while braiding my hair, and told me she would be like a second mother to me. I believed her. I let my guard down. But when my father died, everything changed. The warmth in her eyes disappeared. The soft smiles were gone. The kindness was a mask she no longer needed. With my father buried, I became nothing more than an inconvenience in her life. She took over the house, spending the money my father left behind, treating me like a servant. I scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and washed clothes while she enjoyed a life of ease. I stayed silent. I endured. I told myself that one day, I would escape her grasp. I just didn't know that even when I left, she would still find a way to poison my life. Years passed, but the scars Mama Kalima left on my heart never faded. I had spent my childhood as a servant in my own home, dreaming of the day I would finally escape her shadow. I longed for freedom, for love, for a life where I was more than just an unwanted burden. And then, I met Jabari. He was everything I had ever wished for: strong, kind, hardworking. When he looked at me, I saw admiration, not pity. When he spoke to me, I felt heard, understood. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. When he asked for my hand in marriage, I thought the universe had finally shown me mercy. I believed that stepping into a new life with Jabari would erase all the pain of my past. With him, I could be free. Mama Kalima played the role of a loving mother well. She smiled sweetly when Jabari came to visit, praised him endlessly, and even insisted on helping with the wedding preparations. But there was something about the way she watched him, too intently, too knowingly. The way she laughed a little too hard at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, held his gaze for just a second too long. A chill ran down my spine, but I pushed the feeling away. I refused to let my past trauma cloud my happiness. I wanted to believe she had changed. I wanted to believe that, for once, nothing would go wrong. I was wrong. After our wedding, Jabari and I moved into a small but cozy home. It wasn't extravagant, but it was filled with love. I thought I had finally escaped my past. But then, strange things began to happen. Mama Kalima started visiting too often. At first, she came with harmless excuses, bringing food, checking on me, offering advice. But soon, her visits became frequent. Uncomfortable. She started dressing differently. Younger. Bolder. She laughed too much at Jabari's jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, and looked at him like he was a prize she wanted to claim. Still, I stayed silent. I told myself I was imagining things. Until the day I heard them whispering. That night, I woke up with a dry throat. The house was silent, except for the faint rustling of leaves outside. The moonlight slipped through the cracks in the window, casting soft shadows across the room. Jabari was not beside me. A strange feeling crawled up my spine. He never left our bed in the middle of the night. I sat up, listening. That's when I heard them, low voices coming from the sitting room. Slowly, I slipped out of bed, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My bare feet moved silently across the floor as I crept closer. I know you feel it too, Jabari. Mama Kalima's voice was soft, teasing. Please, Stop this, Jabari's voice was low, tense. You don't have to pretend, she whispered. Zuwena is a girl. I am a woman. I can give you things she never will. The room spun around me. My chest tightened as if an invisible hand had grabbed my heart and squeezed. My fingers dug into the wall for support. I wanted to burst into the room, to scream, to tear her away from him. But my legs felt frozen. I stood there, listening, waiting, praying that Jabari would do the right thing. Silence. A long, dreadful silence. Then, finally, his voice. You need to leave, Mama Kalima. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't even angry. Just quiet. Weak. She laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. You can lie to yourself, Jabari. But you can't lie to me. I heard movement. The rustling of fabric. The sound of her stepping closer. I clenched my fist. Then, footsteps. She was leaving. I turned and rushed back to the bedroom, slipping under the covers just before Jabari entered. My breath was shaky, my body stiff as I forced myself to stay still. He stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then, he climbed into bed beside me. I waited. Waited for him to touch me, to hold me like he always did. But he didn't. Instead, he turned his back to me. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had spent my whole life running from Mama Kalima's cruelty. But now, she wasn't trying to break me with words or punishments. This time, she was trying to steal the one thing I had left, my husband. And the worst part, I wasn't sure if he was strong enough to stop her. The next day, I decided to go shopping. At least, that's what I told him. In reality, I had to know the truth. I told Jabari I was going shopping. He smiled and kissed my forehead before I left, but my heart was heavy with doubt. I stepped outside, letting the warm sun touch my skin, but I felt no warmth inside. I walked slowly down the road, pretending to be on my way to the market. My hands clutched the basket, but my mind was somewhere else. What if I was wrong? What if it was all in my head? But deep inside, I knew the truth. As soon as I was out of sight, I stopped. Taking a deep breath, I turned back and hid near the trees, close enough to see the house but far enough to remain unseen. My heart pounded in my chest, my fingers curling around the rough bark of the tree. Minutes passed. The village was quiet. The only sound was the rustling of leaves and the distant voices of people going about their day. I kept my eyes on the road, waiting. And then, just as I feared, Mama Kalima arrived. She was dressed in a way no mother should ever dress in front of her daughter's husband. Bold. Seductive. Shameless. My stomach twisted as I watched her walk to the door. She knocked, and almost instantly, Jabari opened it. Please don't let her in. Close the door. Walk away. But he didn't. He let her in. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I needed to see more. I crept closer to the window, my hands trembling, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. Inside, Mama Kalima placed her hands on Jabari's chest, her fingers slowly moving as she whispered something I couldn't hear. Jabari didn't push her away. He didn't stop her. My vision blurred with unshed tears. My heart pounded like a drum inside my chest. Was this really happening? Was this the man I loved, the man who had sworn to be mine? Rage and betrayal crashed over me like a tidal wave. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Without thinking, I pushed the door open with all my strength and stepped inside. My voice trembled, but my anger was louder than my fear. Get out of my house. The room fell into silence. Mama Kalima turned, her eyes widening for a second before she smirked. Smirked. I was just talking to Jabari, dear, she said sweetly. Nothing to be upset about. Jabari looked at me, guilt all over his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I shook my head. I had seen enough. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I had spent my life being weak, being silent. Not anymore. I turned to Jabari. If you love her, go with her. But I will never be disrespected in my own home. Mama Kalima laughed. Oh, Zuwena, you're such a child. You think men stay with little girls like you forever. I met her gaze. And then, I laughed too. Do you really think you can steal him and win? I asked, stepping closer. Do you really think he will respect you after betraying his wife? What do you think will happen when you grow older? When another woman comes along? For the first time, Mama Kalima's confidence wavered. I turned to Jabari. You choose her or me. He looked between us, sweat on his brow. Then, finally, he spoke. I choose my wife. Mama Kalima's face twisted with rage. Without another word, she stormed out. Jabari begged for forgiveness. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now held desperation. He swore it was nothing. That he had never wanted her. That he had only been caught in a moment of weakness. But I didn't believe him. I couldn't. Something inside me had already shattered beyond repair. No amount of apologies, no amount of promises could put it back together. At first, I tried. I stayed. I told myself that maybe, with time, I could forgive him. That maybe the love we once had could return. But every time I looked at him, I saw her hands on him. I heard her whispers. I felt the betrayal like a knife twisting in my chest. And then one morning, as the sun rose and filled the sky with gold, I woke up with a strange feeling in my heart. I deserved better. For so long, I had been running from pain. First, from Mama Kalima's cruelty. Then, from the fear of losing my husband. But I never stopped to ask myself, was I truly happy? The answer was no. I had spent my whole life fighting to be loved, to be chosen, to be enough. But love shouldn't be a battle. It shouldn't be something I had to beg for. So I made a decision. That very day, I packed my things. I didn't tell Jabari. I didn't give him time to stop me. I had spent enough of my life waiting for people to treat me right. I was done waiting. When he came home that evening, he found the house empty. The space where I once slept, once laughed, once cried, was now silent. He called my name. Over and over. But I was already gone. Far away from the place that had broken me. Away from the ghost of my past. I started over. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the loneliness crept in, whispering doubts into my mind. But I refused to let it win. Because every morning, I woke up knowing I had chosen myself. And that was enough. I never looked back. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't revenge. It's walking away with your dignity intact.